My name is Nancy Henson. I'm 34 years old, and if you had told me a year ago that I'd be divorced before I even had time to realize my marriage was broken, I would have laughed at you. But that night, or rather that early morning at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, I stopped laughing. The house was silent, the kind of quiet that presses on your ears. I'd fallen asleep on the couch with the TV muted. Soft light still spilled across the living room. My phone buzzed against the coffee table. A message from my husband. I remember picking it up lazily, expecting something mundane. Maybe Mark had landed safely in Las Vegas for his conference. Maybe he was sending me a half-hearted drunk text saying he missed me. But what I saw stole the breath from my lungs. First, a photo loaded. Mark, my husband of 6 years, standing in front of a tacky, neon-lit wedding chapel with Lisa, his coworker. They were holding marriage certificate papers. Her bouquet was made of fake roses. His smile was crooked, like a teenager showing off stolen beer. Then the text appeared, typed in the tone of a cruel teenage dare. Just married Lisa. I've been sleeping with her for 8 months. You're pathetic, by the way. Your boring energy made this so easy. Enjoy your sad little life. The words blurred. My hand shook, but only for a moment, and then, strangely, I felt nothing. No sobs, no rage, just this hollow numbness, as if I were outside my own body. I stared at the message for maybe 30 seconds. The house creaked in the silence. My chest rose and fell with an unnatural calm. And then I typed a single word. Great. I set the phone down. It buzzed again almost instantly, but I didn't look. Something inside me, something sharp and firm, clicked into place. Because while Mark thought he had just destroyed me, he forgot who really ran the life he was walking away from. The next hour was a whirlwind of ruthless efficiency. By 3:15 a.m., every card in his wallet was canceled. He had always been a mess with money. I was the one who kept everything afloat. The house deed in my name, the accounts in my name, his credit cards. He was just an authorized user on mine. Click, remove, delete, block. At 3:30, I called a 24-hour locksmith. The man on the other end of the line sounded sleepy. An emergency lock change at this hour? Yes, I said. My voice was flat and foreign, even to me. I'll pay you extra if you come right now. At 4 a.m., headlights swept across my driveway. The locksmith was a burly guy with sleepy eyes, but his hands moved fast. He didn't ask questions after I showed him the text message. His lips tightened into a thin line like he'd seen this before. By 5 a.m., my house was sealed. New locks, new garage code, updated passwords. Mark's keys, cards, and codes were now worthless. I stood at the window, watching the night soften into dawn. For the first time in years, I felt not safe, not yet, but in control. I went upstairs, got into bed, and slept for 2 solid hours. The banging woke me up. 8 a.m. On the dot, my door was rattling under heavy fists. I shot up, heart racing, then forced myself to be calm. I walked downstairs, peered through the peephole. 2 police officers stood on my porch. One older with gray at his temples, the other younger, trying to look stern but already impatient. I opened the door a crack. "Ma'am," the older one said, "we received a call about a domestic dispute. Your husband claims you've locked him out of his house." My husband? The word tasted bitter. I leaned back, pulled my phone from my pocket, and without a word, held up the screen. The infamous Las Vegas message glowed in the morning light. The older cop leaned in, squinting. His eyebrows shot up. "Is this for real?" The younger one tried to stifle a laugh. His lips twitched. "He's not my husband anymore," I said calmly. "He married someone else 5 hours ago." They exchanged a look. A radio crackled on the senior officer's shoulder, and a woman's voice, Mark's mother, I assumed, shrieked unintelligibly in the background. "Ma'am," the officer sighed into the radio, "this isn't a police matter. You'll have to sort this out legally. We can't force her to let him in if he's married to someone else." The shrieking got louder. The older cop winced and turned the volume down. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. He says you've stolen his belongings and his money. I exhaled slowly. This house was purchased before the marriage. The deed is in my name. The credit cards were mine. He was only an authorized user. I haven't touched his personal belongings. The officers looked at each other again. The older one finally nodded. All right, just don't destroy anything. If he wants his things, make sure they're available. Of course, I said. My voice was calm, but inside my heart was pounding like a war drum. I watched from the window as they walked back down the driveway, shaking their heads. When the street was empty again, I closed the curtains and leaned against the wall. Mark thought he could replace me in a night. He thought Las Vegas lights and cheap vows would erase everything we'd built. But the locks had turned. The door was shut, and for the first time, I realized so was I. By the afternoon, the calm I had built around myself fractured, not because I doubted my decision, but because I knew Mark well enough to predict what came next. And right on cue, around 2 p.m., the doorbell rang. I peeked through the blinds and felt my stomach twist. Mark was on the driveway, not alone. Beside him stood Lisa, his new wife, in her cheap white sundress, which still held the creases from a sale rack hanger. Flanking them were two familiar figures, Margaret, Mark's mother with her perpetual scowl, and Sandra, his younger sister, whose sneer always hovered somewhere between mean girl and predator. I opened the garage door before they could knock again. I was expecting them. Mark's boxes were stacked neatly against the wall, taped shut and labeled in thick black marker. Clothes, books, electronics. Mark's arrogance faltered when he saw the neat rows. He tried to cover it with a sneer. Wow, efficient. Didn't even wait for me to get back, huh? You're not back, I said, my voice steady. You got married. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, tucking her hair behind her ear. For the first time, I noticed the tan line where her engagement ring must have been. It was gone. Margaret wasted no time. This is outrageous, Nancy. A wife does not throw her husband's things in the garage like trash. I'm not his wife anymore. My words were sharp, clipped. And nothing in there is trash. It's everything he owns, packed carefully. You should be thanking me, Sandra snorted. Carefully. You're a control freak, Nancy. Always have been. You're just mad Mark finally found someone who makes him happy. Lisa's face tightened at the word happy. Even she didn't seem convinced. Mark stepped forward, puffing out his chest as if posture could erase the humiliation. Look, Nancy, I get that you're hurt, but you can't just lock me out. This house, I cut him off, was purchased 3 years before I met you. Your name is not on the deed. It never was. I watched the color drain from his face, replaced by a blotchy, angry red. Margaret snapped, "We'll call the police again. You can't just erase a marriage in one night." A thin smile played on my lips. Funny. That's exactly what Mark did. And the police already told you. This is no longer their fight. Lisa shifted, whispering something to Mark. Her hand brushed his, but he pulled away, jaw tight. "You're vindictive," Margaret hissed. "You've always tried to control him. That's why he left you." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound surprised even me. "He didn't leave me, Margaret. He ran from responsibility and straight into the arms of Lisa, which, judging by that U-Haul receipt in your hand, are already empty." Lisa's face flushed pink. She opened her purse, pulled out a card, swiped it on the U-Haul scanner the driver had brought. Declined. She tried another one. Declined again. The silence was thick. Mark's jaw clenched. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and threw a credit card at the driver. "Fine, use mine." Lisa's eyes went wide. "I thought you—" she began, but Mark cut her off with a sharp look. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Looks like that Vegas glow wore off faster than you thought." The standoff dragged on. Words cut deeper than knives. Sandra stepped forward, her eyes glinting with cruelty. "You think you're so clever, Nancy, but you're bitter, alone, and 34. What do you have left? The words landed like stones, but instead of breaking me, they lit something inside. I stepped forward, close enough to see the twitch at the corner of her mouth. What do I have left? I said softly. I have my house, my career, my freedom, and I no longer have Mark, which honestly feels like a blessing. Mark flinched. Margaret muttered something under her breath. Lisa's voice broke the silence. It was lower, shakier than I expected. Mark, did you know she canceled all your cards? His face clouded for a fraction of a second. I saw it, the flash of panic. I let the moment hang in the air. Then slowly, deliberately, I pulled out my phone. Lisa, you might want to know. Your new husband's company has a strict non-fraternization policy. I wonder what HR would think about this little Las Vegas adventure. Lisa's head whipped toward Mark. You said it wouldn't matter, he barked. Shut up! The garage felt stuffy, the air thick with everyone's breath. Finally, I stepped back. You have 1 hour to load everything and leave. After that, the locks are being changed again, and the rest of his junk is going to the curb. Margaret opened her mouth to protest, but Mark grabbed a box with jerky movements. Lisa stood frozen, her gaze jumping between us. I turned and went back inside the house, closing the door firmly behind me. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the dawning realization that I was no longer powerless. Through the window, I watched them struggle with the boxes, their voices raised in sharp bursts. Lisa arguing, Margaret snapping, Sandra mocking, and Mark grunting under the weight of his own belongings. And I thought, let them carry it. Every box, every lie, every consequence. Let them carry it because I don't have to anymore. When the last box was gone, I sat at my kitchen table looking out at the quiet driveway. The house felt different now, still wounded but lighter somehow, as if shedding his presence piece by piece. I knew Mark wouldn't give up easily. He never did. But for the first time in years, I felt ready. Whatever storm he brought next, I would face it head on, because the locks had turned, and so had I. I should have known the peace wouldn't last. Mark was never the type to walk away quietly. Losing control always made him desperate, and desperate people flail the hardest when they're drowning. It started 2 days later. I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Notifications were piling up like a storm surge. Facebook tags, Instagram DMs, even LinkedIn messages from old coworkers I hadn't spoken to in years. Mark had launched a campaign. His words, his mother's, his sister's, plastered across every platform they could reach. Nancy Henson is an abusive narcissist. She trapped Mark in a loveless marriage. She manipulated him financially and emotionally. She made him so miserable he had no choice but to find true love. The smear campaign was a gut punch. Screenshots of their posts scrolled past on my phone. Margaret crying in selfies. Sandra posing dramatically with captions about protecting her brother. And Mark, smiling grimly next to Lisa, writing about how he'd finally escaped me. What unsettled me most wasn't their lies. It was how easily some people believed them. Comments from mutual friends bled beneath the posts. Wow, I never knew Nancy was like that. She always seemed controlling. Good for you, Mark. You deserve happiness. I dropped the phone onto the counter, my hands shaking. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was a war. That evening, I called Daniel. Daniel wasn't just a friend. He was the kind of guy who could rebuild a crashed laptop blindfolded. He'd been in our circle for years, always the one fixing the Wi-Fi at parties, the guy people called when their phone died in the middle of a road trip. "Hey, Nancy," he answered, his voice sharp with concern. "Are you okay? I've been seeing things." I swallowed hard. "They're everywhere, Daniel. He's turning people against me. I don't even know where to begin." "You begin," he said, "by fighting back. And I think I know how." By nightfall, Daniel was at my kitchen table, his laptop glowing in the dim light. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling threads from places I didn't know existed. "Mark thinks he's smart," Daniel muttered. "But he's sloppy. Always has been. Let's see. Jackpot. On the screen, messages appeared. Facebook conversations stretching back over a year. Mark and Lisa weaving a smug, ugly story. I leaned closer. The bile rose as I read. She's so clueless. I've been siphoning money from her grocery account for months. I've almost saved enough for our dream wedding, babe. Can't wait to see her face when we're gone. Message after message, bragging, mocking, conspiring, not just cheating, but scheming. My favorite, or perhaps the most damning, was one from Lisa. You think she'll notice the missing money? Mark's reply, Nah, Nancy's too boring to check. Daniel whistled under his breath. This is gold. You want me to prep it? I nodded. My chest was tight, but not with fear anymore, with something sharper, anger, cold and precise. Within hours, Daniel had the screenshots ready. I posted them with no commentary, no emotional paragraphs, just the proof. The internet churned. The same friends who had whispered doubts came flooding back with apologies. The comments turned brutal against Mark. Wow, so you were the manipulator all along. Stealing from her grocery account? That's disgusting. Lisa girl, you married a clown. For the first time in days, I exhaled, but Mark didn't. His desperation bared its teeth. First, his father called my boss. He claimed I was harassing Mark, stalking him, threatening his new wife. My boss, a no-nonsense woman who knew the whole story, called me into her office. She slid her phone across the desk. On the other end, Mark's father's voice was shrieking. She's ruining Mark's life. My boss hit mute and rolled her eyes. Don't worry about it, Nancy. He's wasting his breath. I just thought you'd want to hear how pathetic this is. Then came the attempted break-in. 3 home security cameras caught Mark himself at my back door, rattling the knob, hissing into his phone. She's locked me out. My stuff is still in there. The footage was clear, his angry face lit by my porch light. I sent it straight to my lawyer. Then came the absurd claims. He told mutual friends I had killed his cat. I almost laughed until I realized some people believed him. The irony. Mark knew I was allergic. We never had a cat. Finally, he sank even lower. He called my mother, crying. She doesn't understand, Mrs. Henson. I made a mistake. Lisa means nothing. Nancy is my life. I was sitting next to my mother on the couch when she answered. I'll never forget her expression. Half disgust, half pity. You should have thought of that before you slept with Lisa for 8 months, she said, her voice like cold glass. Then she hung up. I squeezed her hand. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. Thanks, Mom. She kissed my forehead. You're stronger than he ever deserved. The next day, I got the most surreal phone call of all. Hello, is this Nancy? A woman's voice, polite but strained. This is Betty. I'm Mark's mother-in-law, Lisa's mother. I froze. Yes? She sighed. Look, Mark made a mistake. Young men do foolish things. He can't afford a wife right now. Could you maybe take him back? Just until he gets on his feet? I nearly dropped the phone. You're asking me to take back the man who cheated on me so your daughter doesn't have to face the consequences? Well, when you put it like that, you sound selfish. Marriage is about forgiveness. I laughed. It came out sharp, brittle. Marriage is about respect, and your daughter married a man who has none. Then I hung up. That night, my phone lit up again. A blocked number. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. Mark's voice, ragged and venomous. You've ruined my life, Nancy. I hope you're happy. My reply was automatic, cold, final. Actually, I am. Thanks for asking. I ended the call. I blocked the number and set the phone face down. The silence afterward was heavy, but this time it didn't scare me. Because I knew the worst was yet to come, and I was ready to face it. The courthouse smelled like old paper and faint disinfectant, the kind of place where lives get dismantled under fluorescent lights. I arrived early dressed in a simple navy dress and heels that clicked too loudly against the tile floor. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Miranda, walked beside me like a shield. I wasn't nervous. Not really. The weeks of chaos had burned that out of me. What I felt instead was a strange anticipation, like I was about to watch the final act of a play whose script I'd already read. And then Mark walked in. He wasn't alone. Lisa trailed him, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her chin, once proud, was tilted toward the floor. Her white cardigan hung loosely on her shoulders. Margaret swept in next, her perfume strong enough to sting, with Sandra stuck to her side. Mark tried to meet my gaze across the room, his expression a mix of arrogance and desperation. I looked right through him. The judge entered, a tall man with tired eyes who had clearly seen too many soap operas acted out in real life. We all rose, then sat. Mark's lawyer, a slick man in an ill-fitting suit, stood up first. Your Honor, my client contests the validity of the so-called Las Vegas marriage. He was under emotional duress, manipulated into signing papers while intoxicated. The judge raised an eyebrow. Duress? Intoxication? That's a rather serious claim. Miranda rose smoothly. Your Honor, I have here 73 pages of Facebook messages, text screenshots, and financial records showing that Mr. Henson not only planned this affair for over a year, but boasted about siphoning money from my client to fund it. She held up a thick binder. The sound of it hitting the judge's desk was like a gavel in itself. The judge flipped through the papers, his expression shifting from professional neutrality to amused disgust. He paused, then read aloud. Can't wait to see her stupid face when she realizes I've cleaned her out. His eyes lifted slowly to Mark. Mr. Henson, did you write this? Mark's face turned scarlet. That's out of context. The judge leaned back. What context makes that sound better? Silence. Lisa fidgeted, her face pale. Miranda continued. Your Honor, Mr. Henson not only committed adultery, but bigamy. He legally married another woman while still married to my client. The evidence is indisputable. Mark's lawyer tried again, his voice faltering. Well, technically, my client believed the marriage to Mrs. Henson was already... The judge cut him off with a wave of his hand. Belief does not override the law. He signed marriage documents while still bound to his first marriage. That's bigamy. Frankly, I'm appalled I have to explain it. There were murmurs in the room. Sandra muttered something under her breath, earning a stern look from the bailiff. Finally, the judge gave his ruling. The divorce is granted. Mrs. Henson retains full ownership of her house and assets. Mr. Henson is awarded only his personal belongings in his vehicle, for which he remains financially responsible. Furthermore, due to Mrs. Henson's financial support of Mr. Henson's professional certification last year, he will pay 6 months of alimony at $800 per month. The gavel struck, final and absolute. I didn't smile, not outwardly, but inside, relief unfolded like a breath held for too long. Mark, on the other hand, looked like someone had stolen the floor out from under him. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Lisa buried her face in her hands. Margaret clutched her pearls dramatically, and Sandra just glared at me as if daggers could undo legal rulings. But the real show began outside. As soon as we hit the courthouse steps, Margaret erupted. "This is robbery! You've robbed my baby boy!" Her voice cracked like a crow's call, drawing the eyes of everyone on the sidewalk. Lisa's mother, Betty, had also shown up, clutching a coffee cup and muttering about young love. The shouting escalated quickly. Sandra lunged forward, a paper coffee cup in her hand. She threw it toward me, missed, and the liquid splashed all over Betty's blouse. Betty gasped. "You idiot!" Margaret shot back. "Watch your tone, you tramp!" And just like that, a full-blown coffee fight erupted between two mothers on the courthouse steps. Screaming, splashing, security guards running over. I stood to the side, arms crossed, watching the chaos like it was a badly written comedy sketch. Miranda leaned over to me and whispered, "I've had divorce trials less dramatic than this lunch break." Notably absent from the fray was Mark. He had already slunk away, shoulders hunched, Lisa trailing him like a shadow. He didn't even look back. Word got back to me later that he'd found solace in the arms of a 22-year-old waitress he'd met the night of the Vegas wedding. Lisa had lost the gamble before the chips even hit the table. That night, I sat in my quiet kitchen again. The house hummed with silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not heavy, not oppressive, peaceful. I poured myself a glass of wine and thought about the irony of it all. For years, Mark had accused me of being too cold, not emotional enough, of shutting him out. But it was that very detachment that had saved me. When the text came, when the lies poured out, when the police called, I hadn't screamed or pleaded. I had acted, and that had made all the difference. I raised the glass in a small toast to no one but myself. To closure, I whispered. The divorce decree felt less like an ending and more like the lifting of a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. In the weeks that followed, my life began to reassemble itself. I sold the house. The market was insane, and offers came in faster than I could track. Within a month, I'd signed the papers, handed over the keys, and walked away with a profit I never expected. Instead of another suburban house with too many rooms echoing with absence, I bought a downtown condo, smaller, sleeker, with a view of the city lights. It felt alive, vibrant, like starting over on my own terms. Mark, meanwhile, was unraveling. I didn't seek out updates, but gossip has a way of finding you. Margaret couldn't resist calling my mother, and Sandra's cryptic Facebook posts practically begged for interpretation. Lisa had left him, not in a quiet, amicable way, but in a very public, very humiliating explosion. She had discovered the waitress, a 22-year-old with bright hair and sharp eyeliner, who had caught Mark's wandering eye on the very night of their Vegas vows. Lisa packed her bags and stormed out, but not before posting a bitter essay online about how Mark had cheated on her. The irony was almost too delicious. To make matters worse, his company's HR department had finally gotten wind of the Las Vegas stunt, strict non-fraternization policy. Both Mark and Lisa were fired. 1 week married, 1 week unemployed. And apparently, Mark was back in his old bedroom at Margaret's house, living on takeout and excuses. The rest of the family drama spread like aftershocks. Sandra, ever the dramatist, posted about toxic family members and hinted at cutting ties. She didn't specify with whom, but it was obvious. Margaret had become infamous at her local Starbucks. After screaming at a barista who vaguely resembled me, calling her that witch, she was banned from 2 locations. Lisa's mother, Betty, had the audacity to sue Mark for emotional damages to her daughter. The case went nowhere, but the mess left scars on their social circles. Meanwhile, Mark's reputation crumbled. Old friends whispered about him. Coworkers distanced themselves. Every screenshot, every post he'd spread lived online forever. He had bet everything on a neon Vegas wedding, and the house always wins. As for me, I moved on. The gym I once dragged myself to out of obligation became a place of quiet rebuilding. It was there I met Matthew, steady, kind, and funny, in a way that didn't demand attention but offered comfort. He'd heard whispers of my saga but never pried. One morning he brought me a coffee after our workout. The cup had a name scrawled on it in black marker. I frowned at it in confusion until I realized it said, "Not Mark." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled it. Matthew smiled. "Figured you could use the reminder." For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something loosen inside me. Not dependence, not desperation, just lightness. Miranda, my lawyer, had one final gift. At our last meeting, she handed me a frame. Inside was a copy of the Las Vegas marriage certificate. Mark and Lisa's names scrolled in ink beneath the neon chapel logo. She grinned smugly. "Easiest case of my career. Figured you'd want a souvenir." I hung it in my apartment, not as a wound, but as a trophy. Proof that betrayal could be overcome. One night, months later, I ran into an old acquaintance at a bookstore. We chatted politely, and then she lowered her voice. "Did you hear? Apparently Mark's mother called Lisa a gold-digging tramp at her book club." The The words so blindsided me that I burst out laughing, right in the middle of the aisle. Heads turned. I didn't care. Poetic justice, delivered by the very people who once swore he was their golden boy. Sometimes late at night, I think about that text message. Just married Lisa. You're pathetic, by the way. Those words might have haunted me once. Now they're nothing more than the punchline to a joke. Because this is the truth I finally learned. People like Mark write their own downfall. All you have to do is let them. I raise my wine glass on my balcony, the city lights glittering below. To stupid games, I whisper, and even stupider prizes. I smile.